Diane, Carey, and Brodeur. Okay, here they are. Let's give them a nice round of applause.
Hi, does it work?
Yep.
Hey, shipboard speakers. How are you? Yeah? No, that wasn't good enough. How are you? Oh, that was better. Pretty good con so far, huh? Yes. Oh, you just great, huh? Okay. Me too. Let me fill you in. This is my husband, Gregory Brodeur. We work together on all the books. Yeah. Everybody tells me about Final Frontier. I haven't read the book yet, but your husband's foreword was great. So we get that probably more often than anything. But we, let's see, 3 Star Trek books so far. The next one that comes out is Ghost Ship, which is the first book in a new series about Star Trek: The Next Generation. So, understandably, we're very interested to see how you feel about that. Be sure to write to us. Hold that question. Hold that. I remember you, okay? Yeah, we'll take questions. I'll talk to you. We love to talk. And then after that, we're scheduled for a 2 giant novel series called The Federation Mutiny, which will come out sometime next year. So we're going to be doing Star Trek from June until probably February. Again, it's Star Trek has taken over. It's really not bad at all. Because we do other things. We also write some perish the thought historical romances and that kind of thing. Oh, terrible. That's a whole other convention crowd. And we do some screenplays. I beg your pardon? I know you, don't I? Yeah, you sure do. I don't know. It's been bought by Crown Books. We'll see. I actually don't even know when it's coming out. I'm doing so much Star Trek, I forget the other things. And we also write screenplays. We're having some pretty good luck in Hollywood. We're always talking. So a little bit of everything. The main thing is that we're not Star Trek writers, we're not romance writers, we're not screenplay writers. We are professional writers, and that means we can do everything we try to do. Notice I had my fingers crossed. The way we work is kind of interesting. I actually do all of the writing, but I'm kind of crippled without Greg. I can't write as well as what comes out in the end without Gregory, because Greg is the story editor. He's the plot man. My strong points are dialogue, characterization, actually making the scenes dramatic, making them come out, making the words right, that sort of thing. Greg is the one who really choreographs the scenes in many, many ways. He does most of the science. He does most of the plotting. I always sit down with my note cards, and you'd be surprised how silent I can be when I'm just listening to Greg come up with a plot. He came up with the entire plot for battle stations in one night at Chi-Chi's. Because you can't do this stuff at home, right? It's a great excuse to get out, go have nachos and a drink and eat, right? Okay, good excuse. So, I guess that's basically us, and I'm not gonna stand here and tell you about things you don't want to know. So you have to tell me what you want to know, and then we'll just answer questions. You yell right out, real. I owe this guy a question.
He ate something too late.
He's eating. All right, hold that thought. What? In Ghost Ship, is Wesley going to save the ship? Wesley is going to nearly blow up the ship. Oh, poor Wesley.
Picard gets mad and fires him out one of the photon tubes.
Now, you want a real answer? Wesley does very nearly blow up the ship. The reason is, Wesley is a very bright boy, but he is 15 years old, 16 years old, right? He doesn't have experience. There's a difference between brilliance and experience. He needs the experience. We brought that out in the book a little bit. It worked out pretty well. It was interesting to do because they're very careful with the new characters. They don't want us to touch them, and it's kind of hard to do this sort of thing. Yeah, stay there.
Okay, Ghost Ship, about the next generation.
Yep.
Are you going to go more into about the rest of the crew, the people living there? I mean, there's about 1,000 people on the ship, and we never see anyone.
Yeah, there are 1,000 people on the ship and we don't see them. And how come we have a whole crew, that's, you know, the bridge crew that supposedly has a ship full of families, but none of them have any families? That'd be, well, why don't we have a married first officer or something, anything. But we didn't in that book. You can only, we had a problem with Ghost Ship because it was the very first Next Generation book. And I'm hoping that in subsequent books, the authors will start to focus more this character, this relationship, this and that. But I felt an obligation to get at least all of the characters in some fashion, 9 main characters, into a book and have them make an approach. So there wasn't room in that book for other characters. But later on, I'm hoping that they'll let the novelists expand a little bit and maybe even focus on certain characters and certain relationships.
So Tasha Yar still in it, or is she gone?
Well, that's another story. Is Tasha Yar still in it? Well, we got the rumor very early on that Tasha Yar was not going to be in the show anymore. And so we were going to put her in the book. That was the word that we got from Pocket, don't put her in. And I said, fine, no problem. And I was talking to the Star Trek office, and I mentioned that I knew that she wasn't going to be in the show anymore, and they got very angry. How dare I know?
Everybody else knew, right?
It was a very well-known rumor among the Star Trek pros. Yeah, but they don't want the Star Trek authors to know anything that they don't want to tell anybody. And they made me believe that she was still going to be in the show. They actually deceived me, I think. So I put her back in the book. I figured, well, she should be in at least one book anyway. So she's in Ghost Ship. And 3 days later, Gene Roddenberry's on Entertainment Tonight telling me that she's off the show. And they couldn't be honest with me. I was sitting in the Star Trek office, and they weren't above board. I was a little peeved about that. But she's in the book, so what the heck? So I got her, and the rest of them don't, I guess. Take credit. Yeah, question. Does Kirk have any other brothers and sisters? Yeah. You said siblings, and my mind thought, you mean, does what's his name have does Merritt Buttrick have a brother and sister? There is not any mention that I know of any other brothers and sisters, so we just used Sam Kirk, the little guy. I think he was 14 in Final Frontier. You lose track, you know, one book, another book. He's the older brother, and there isn't, as far as I know, any official mention of any other siblings.
Well, there's Peter Kirk's nephew.
There's Peter, that's a nephew. There are a lot of Peters in Star Trek. You notice that? Hold on a second, let me go way out in the audience. Go ahead. Do I have any more plans for Commander Piper? Yeah. Aren't you nice? Knowing very well what it is to introduce new characters to Star Trek and doing it with a great conscience and a great deal of care and a great deal of respect for the old characters, yes, there will be more of Piper. And I say that it is truly by popular demand. Every time I end a book, it is the end of the book and the end of those characters. I don't intentionally hint for sequels. Some people told me that I was hinting for sequels in Final Frontier. Really, I wasn't. Because whenever I end a book, I assume that's it. I never put, you know, the mission continues or something like that without really knowing that the next book is coming. So I wait to see what happens. And by popular demand, people have been just asking and asking and asking for more of Piper, and so has Pocket Books. So we have plans for Piper. We'll see.
I was just going to say that Piper will be in the Federation Mutiny, which is the 2-book series, and then after that will be a book called Biologic Alone, and that'll be centered quite a bit around the relationship between Piper and Kirk. And then finally, one more we have planned for her that we haven't even named yet, so unnamed manuscript too.
Yeah, we're actually getting to a point where we're under contracts for books we haven't even named or thought about. I can just guarantee you that Piper is not a self-indulgent character. She's going to be going through a lot of trouble and trial and tribulation. How would you like to outrank some of the people on the bridge? How would you feel? You know, she doesn't feel too good about it. So we'll see what happens. She's an interesting person. Yeah, well, that's why. She wants to know why we decided to do books that were from the first-person perspective of somebody that, a character that we didn't know. And you hit on it right there. To get a new perspective was the whole thing. At the time, there had been a lot of Star Trek books, and they were just, your run-of-the-mill mission after mission after mission. I thought, there has to be a new way to look at Star Trek. The only new way to look at Star Trek is through somebody else's eyes. So I tried the book. Actually, I wrote a proposal for the book. I didn't write the whole thing, because if you don't sell it to Pocket, you can't sell it to anybody. They're the only ones with the exclusive fiction rights. So I figured, well, we have to look at James Kirk from a different perspective and Spock from a different perspective and see them whispering off in the corner and feel self-conscious about it and things like that. So Piper just appeared and started talking in first person. I had no trouble with it. And I sent it to Pocket, and they called me and said, you broke every rule we've got. We love it. So I did. I broke every rule. They had 7 rules. I broke every one. But that was why, to get a new perspective. Yeah, green. I see you. I can't hear you. When I'm writing the stories, do I feel like I'm in the Enterprise? Sure. You bet. Now, I try to think of it that way. Whether I feel like I'm actually there, I guess so. It's kind of hard when you've got a 9-month-old baby pulling on your leg, But sure, it's all up here. I'm very visual. I'm a television kid. Don't let anybody tell you that television's a bad thing if you want to be literate. It's not. It gives you a whole perspective. I'm used to looking at things from camera angle and feeling as though we got to walk down the halls of the new Enterprise. We were on the set about a month ago. It's beautiful. The hallway's real long. Like they could take a good run and run all the way down the corridor without breaking the camera or breaking the angle or turning or something. They can follow an actor run down the corridor. Yes. Are they going to what? On the Next Generation? I have no idea.
Next Generation and the original series books.
Well, in the books, when they talk about how characters met, you mean in the Next Generation set of books, we will only do what they will allow us to do. They have their thumb, Paramount, the Star Trek office, has their thumb on top of all the authors, and they just will not let us expand on the characters' pasts, project on their futures, change anything. It's very, very tricky, and they want to know where every source of every piece of imagination came from. They just are really holding us down, so it's difficult to say how far the authors are going to be able to go. I plowed new ground with Ghost Ship, and they were watching me like a hawk. And you know me, I broke all the rules. Okay, way in the back, with the hand up, yep. No, that, okay, go ahead, and then you. All right, you're on hold. Go ahead. No, you go ahead. I'm going to kill you. I want to see you afterward. I'm killing you now. I can bet. Yeah, this is a copy editor from Pocketbook. All of you guys, I want you to kill this woman. It's copy editing. You have to be very careful with every word that you use, and it's very tricky. And sometimes what you do when you run into, the book's going to be copy edited, you go overboard. Because you know that somebody down the line is going to start striking you down, and then you get to compromise, and there's a limit to how far you can go, and sometimes after a while you learn to go too far. And then you start reeling in slowly. Then you have the copy editor killed. It works out, It's, writing is very tricky, but you love your book, you love your words, and then the first thing that happens is an editor looks at it and runs through it and uses a pencil, and a copy editor runs through it and uses a pencil, and then the marketing department gets after you and they want to change things, and then for God's sake, Paramount Studios. Oh, yeah, it's really... Now, you want to know something? Paramount Studios was editing the audio cassette version of Final Frontier. Ready for that? You know what those are. They're on sale in there, only Final Frontier isn't out yet. They're editing the audio cassette version of Final Frontier. They wanted to know why I mentioned, why Robert April was in the book and why I mentioned Christopher Pike, and aren't those just other names for James Kirk before he became James Kirk? I know who they were. They don't.
The script was 40 pages for the audio cassette version, and Paramount sent back 5 pages of changes. I think there's a question all the way in the back. Yes, they have a deadline, and it's right in our contract. If we're more than a week late, they could have us killed. Ghost Ship, as a matter of fact, was probably our fastest, and we just did that. It took 5 weeks. Final Frontier took a little bit longer because Diane was heavily with child at the time. She couldn't reach a keyboard. And that took about 4 months.
Boy or girl?
Boy. Gordon. 10-10. In the purple. Can't hear you. Do you know what you call a babe in arms? All the way at the back. Go ahead and speak up. It's coming out, it's scheduled in July. We understand the bookstores will get it in June. Are we going to write a script? We have submitted several. There's a small chance that some of them might be purchased, some ideas.
It's very difficult right now for anybody from the outside to get a script sold to the next generation. And the reason is they're either being written at the source or rewritten at the source. Diane Duane sold that one script. She said the only thing that resembled her script was the title when they gave it back to her. That makes me very nervous about submitting anything. We submitted Ghost Ship. They didn't like it because I like to shoot the phasers. You know, I like to use the ship's weapons. I like more action than they're giving us so far. So we're just not seeing eye to eye on some things. Although Sonny Cooper and Greg and I are getting together on a submission, so you never know. We don't know. What happens, it happens. Hollywood is a very funny business, and you can drop names until they start to bounce, and it doesn't mean anything is happening. Just that maybe you're getting some attention, and it can fall right off. You never know. I don't know what's happening there. There are a lot of changes. D.C. Fontana's gone, Robert Lewin's gone, David Gerald's gone, everybody's gone. You know, I think the only person left is Susan Sackett, and I guess Gene Roddenberry's still there. I'm not sure. You never know. We live in Flint. Huh. No, I went to Flint Northern. So you can leave now.
I went to West Bloomfield.
Yeah, he's a foreigner. Just a second, hold on, I'm still in the middle of that question. We actually do go out to Chi-Chi's, or Patty McGee's, or Bennigan's, and we sit over a table. We sit over a table, and we hammer out whatever scene or plot we have to hammer out at the time. We do intensive sessions. Works very well. And then I work on my note cards. I have little 5x9 note cards that I put things down. It's great. It's a great discovery for writers. And then I take the note cards, and after I've developed a scene on the note cards to some reasonable extent, I go sit down at the computer. After I'm done at the computer, Greg goes and sits at the computer, does all the editing, tells me whether the pacing for scenes is right, wrong, etc., down to the word and comma sometimes. And sometimes, well, we've gotten to where we work together very smoothly and very well, and we know what we want to get across. And he's really I'm the nuts and bolts, and Greg is the brilliant inspiration in many cases. Yeah, I'm the Yes. Okay. Wait a minute, hold on. What? Both our names aren't on the cover. It's actually his idea because I'm the writer. And I'm the one that spent 10 years really learning to write before he started to participate. He doesn't change a word or a comma He doesn't change a word or a comma before he checks with me first. And Greg wants that known, I guess. I keep trying to get his name in front of the public because he does so much, and the books just wouldn't be that good for him.
we split the credit actually. She gets the fame and I get the money.
Yeah. And he gets the kids and I get the books. Never know. What's that? They're coming to get me. Yes. Anybody got a phaser? Wow. Yeah. What? How many are at this con? I have no idea. How many of you are here? Everybody? All right, count off. Okay, got a question?
Yes. I have known that you were once a piper at the Renaissance Festival.
Yes,
Take
don't
part
worry.
again?
Yeah, I play bagpipes. 17 years. Yeah, I played Michigan Renaissance Festival. I've been there 7 years. 7 years? Yeah, 7 years now. I'm the only one without a kilt on, you know, and my little tights and the cape and the whole bit. I should be back this year, although I've reached a privileged position of not having to play at festival every day, which is very nice, because 17 long days is very grueling for playing bagpipes, I want to tell you. Yeah, I wonder where Piper got her name, you know, Alta Rita. Yep. Oh yeah, she's coming back with her whole crew. Kirk will make sure of that. Because he believes that a good captain needs to have his little core of people around, so he's going to make sure that wherever Piper's transferred, the other people go with her. It's all part of Kirk's plan. That's why Piper and her group work. Because Kirk is really still the hero of Star Trek and must remain so. Come on, I think so, don't you? Yes, Spock too. McCoy, all right, we'll take a vote on who's the hero. Yeah, I like Scotty. He was the one that got me into it in the beginning. Question? Yep.
Okay, the way this actually works on the characters is everything, lock, stock, and barrel, notes, thoughts, everything is owned by Paramount legally. Okay, we do not have the copyright. If you ever look in the book, we do not have the copyright on any of the books. So Paramount technically owns everything, including new characters. Now, so technically you would ask Paramount, but Paramount would refer you to Pocket, because Pocket is actually handling the books for Paramount. You would send it to Pocket, who would refer it to the editor, Dave Stern, who would refer it to us, and we would say no. Actually, that's basically what would happen. No, there would be absolutely some sharing of characters. As a courtesy thing, they would have to get the author's okay, and unless you wanted to do a really major story, it shouldn't be a problem including characters that have been in our peripheral thing. That's sort of what a shared universe is all about. As a matter of courtesy, usually they'll have you ask the author, and it's not a problem unless, you know, if you want to kill off Piper, we might have an objection. If you want her to get married, we might have an objection, that type of thing. Yeah, they also might give the author editorial rights, like you'd have to do your manuscript and send it to whatever author's the character is, and they'd say, you got it right or you got it wrong, and you might have to change it. It could be a bit of a hassle for you. We try to keep things consistent, although the question was how much do we worry about contradicting things other authors have written. Sometimes you absolutely cannot help it. For instance, in Final Frontier, if you read Final Frontier, we went into the naming of the Enterprise and the class, the Constitution class, and how it came about. Now, if you read Enterprise, Vonda McIntyre said that it was a Constellation class, which it wasn't. It was Constitution class, so we couldn't help but to contradict her there because she was wrong. It's also hard not to sometimes contradict the series or ignore a couple things. But yeah, the animated episode had Robert April in it, and we pretty much ignored that because it was so dumb. It just wasn't any good, so we ignored the animated episode completely in creating Robert April. One thing we enjoy doing, on the other hand, is taking little inconsistencies, I say that, but anyway, and trying to correct them or explain them in our books, why it took place. That's a good example. A good example would be, for instance, if you remember the Balance of Terror episode, remember the Romulans, they only had impulse drive. In other words, they had sublight drive. Well, anybody who knows anything about the size of space knows you cannot explore space on the way they do on Star Trek with slower than light drive. So how were the Romulans doing it? Well, if you read Final Frontier, what they had was a mothership that had warp speed that dropped off the swarms that had sublight speed and so on. So it sort of explains it a little bit, one contradiction cleared up.
All right, the other thing was that we are always wondering how come Star Trek runs into these wonderful characters, these wonderful aliens who have magnificent technologies, and then they just leave. They don't take advantage of these wonderful technologies. Like, remember the Viserias? The big ship with all the power, like immobilized.
The First Federation.
Yeah, the First Federation, right. Baylock, the little short, little kid. Excellent episode up to the end. And they had this wonderful ship that could immobilize a starship. And I like to think of a starship as very, very powerful and magnificent and all those wonderful things. So Greg was wondering how come they didn't all of a sudden pick up on the wonderful technology of the Viserias. And he just figured out that all the Viserias really, it doesn't have any fabulous technology, except it is a gigantic tugboat. It has marvelous tractors, it has fabulous tractor beam power, and that's all it really has. And it was a big fake out. So the Viserias, as Greg came up with it, was just designed to go out and yank asteroids out of orbit and draw them back for mining purposes. So there you go, So they use that technology in battle stations. So they do pick up on the technology whenever Greg and I can arrange it. You never know. The question's over there. Okay, the white shirt. Which character in the next generation has Paramount made the hardest to write for? Who do we have trouble with? It was kind of a problem to write most of them together, because I don't know in a lot of cases what their jobs really are yet. I mean, who handles communications? Who handles sensors? I had trouble with the bridge scenes, trying to figure out whether something came over data console or works console, this and that. We concentrated on Troy, we concentrated on Data, and the relationship between Data and Geordi and Riker. There was a triangle. It was hard to deal with Riker and Picard because we weren't sure which one was really supposed to be the main character of any given story. Because they took the command character and divided it into two characters, and we're not sure whose eyes the readers and the watchers are supposed to look through. So it was a problem of focus. I don't really know yet. I guess I concentrated on Riker's point of view and him looking at Picard and what he saw and that kind of thing. But a lot of them were difficult characters because they haven't let us in on the characters' feelings at all. And so it was tricky to deal with most of them. Yes. Wait a minute. In the red coat, yeah. Do we have plans for science fiction other than Star Trek? We've been asked to do that by a couple of publishers, and it's a possibility. Right now I don't have time. But yeah, there's a possibility. I'm keeping my mind open on it. Didn't we submit one to prom? Yeah, we're thinking about it. It's a possibility. We like it. We like science fiction perfectly well.
The problem is the science fiction market is actually quite small. Star Trek sells very, very well, but in general, it's hard to break into science fiction and make a living at it. So what we're hoping eventually, if you want to know our marketing plan, is by the time we're done just with our current contracts, we'll have 8 Trek books out, and then we are hoping to have enough for readership that we can break into mainstream science fiction and sell a few books rather than having our first book sell 2,000 copies or something like that. You've really got to sell a few.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. There was one way back there. Yeah. They won't let us go anywhere near them. We cannot squeeze a Vulcan into the next generation unless they do it at the source. And
we have time for just one more question.
Okay, one more question. Okay. Plans for George Kirk? I don't know. We'll see. It depends on popular demand, and what popular demand says we should do, we will do.
Bring it back.
Who wants to know how George died?
You gotta tell pocketbooks and they will tell me. right? I don't do anything because I like it, I do it because you like it. All right? Is that it, Carey?
Yes, that it is. Let's have a nice round of applause for our special guest.
Thank you very much.
One more thing, by the way, if anybody wants some books, we'll be setting up over here for a short time. We brought along a number of books, first come, first served, if you want to buy an autographed book.
Okay, let's give another round of applause.
Thank you.
And don't go away because we're giving away valuable prizes. Yes,